Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. The glorious sun beaming down on my face. I'm worried I might have another red crown at the end of this. Feels like the 27th of July all over again. But of course, you didn't come here to find out if I'm going to have a red spot here. No, this video is going to be a little bit different, but first, I'm going to get two things out of the way. First and foremost is that Hugh Edwards, who was charged with making indecent images of children, has now pleaded guilty. So it seems that the BBC really did hire a Jimmy Savile II. Hopefully now he will spend the rest of his time behind bars and his pension should be given away to the victims of these kinds of things, as well as the grooming gangs. And secondly, one minor point about the Southport protests. Actually, no, it's pretty major, isn't it? But they tried to claim that this protest was far right and done by the EDL. You know, the same EDL that basically disbanded about 10 years ago. The same EDL that Tommy Robinson left because he disavowed the far right, the actual far right, not what the media believes is far right, or bar right, I should say, because Tommy Robinson wanted to stay away from the far right. So, yeah, that EDL. Well, how do you suppose the EDL is going to do that if they no longer exist, So it sounds to me like the mainstream media are just reaching for excuses, only this time they've bit off more than they can chew. This is why I went out of my way to name and shame the media. Oh, and ironically, this article comes from The Independent. Tom Watling, yes, this decrepit piece of shit, who is basically taking on the role that Lizzie Dearden, or maybe I was right the first time, had when she was working with The Independent. Hit pieces, projection, and blaming the so-called far right. And then, of course, we have NPCs like Jo Cox's husband, who went out of his way to say, Nigel Farage is stirring up hatred again, or ramping up the hatred. No, he's done no such thing. Like, I really do despair with that NPC, I really do. Like, it begs the question, how many times do you think Jo Cox has turned in our grave because of the bad example her husband is now setting? She wanted you to be a loving husband, Brendan Cox. Or is it Brandon Cox? Or is it full of shit? I don't know. But she wanted you to be a loving husband, not a dog-whistling NPC. So do us all a favour and stay the fuck out of politics, because you're no good at it, Brendan Cox. Now, on to the main point that I want to get to, because obviously anybody who's everybody has heard of Paul Thorpe akin to Tommy Robinson. Very significant following, very patriotic man, says his words softly, but they still pack a punch, like Mike Tyson. He even went on to, Talk Radio to defend what happened on the 27th of July. And it was a sight to behold. It was actually more like just a pleasure to hear more than anything, because you can't really see it. Anyway, the point is, he was great on Talk Radio, putting his points off with great fervour while remaining calm, which is something I probably would have trouble doing against an NPC. Though, to the Talk Radio presenter's credit, he was actually more on our side. But I don't want to talk about that specifically. What I want to talk about is the recent live stream and, of course, his message to us. Do you trust me? As in him, you know what I mean. And I think, understandably, a lot of people are divided right now. For anybody who didn't tune into the live stream, and I wish I could, but I was at work, this was more to do with the Southport riot that happened last night. An awful scene, if ever I had seen one. But as I've said earlier today, I also show a great deal of disdain for our police and our media and our government. Because whether or not these protesters are far right or just concerned parents who are fed up of their children dying because of incompetent career politicians like Keir the Tool Starmer and David the Conman Cameron, the biggest problem we face is that our NPC government hasn't got the balls, whether up here or down there, or in my case both, to close the borders. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill, folks, because, say it with me, it doesn't suit the narrative. They're all too busy pissing their pants at the supposed threat of the far right and trying to score political points as to who can virtue signal the hardest. And what people need to remember is a lot of this shit isn't just a spur of the moment. There are going to be some people who are impulsive. Even I'm impulsive. But here's the thing. A lot of this anger comes from years, not days, of this shit continuing in our country. We have had to continue putting up with the same shit over the last 10, 20, 30 years. And I nearly did my fucking knee in. Anyway, we've had to put up with this the last 10, 20, 30 years. So understandably, there are going to be people who, I even said it in the past, I didn't think it would come true this early, but there are going to be people who aren't going to be able to wait 5 years. Remember this point for later. There are going to be people who, quite understandably, are going to be quite pissed off at the fact that our government and our police and our mainstream media keep putting criminals before our kids, illegal immigrants before our people. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is the people have said time and time and time again, each and every fucking election for the last 10 to 12 years, we want an end to uncontrolled immigration. Now we want an end to immigration full stop, because we've got too many people in our own damn country. Something, of course, the mainstream media is reluctant to tell you. But back to the point about Paul Thorpe. Paul Thorpe has put out live stream basically saying we must remain calm, we must be civil, we must be peaceful. And yes, I am in favor of peaceful resolution. But then there's also the part of me inside that's coming out. I guess you could say it's like that film Face Off with John Travolta and whatever the fuck the other guy's name is. There's one side of me that wants to do what's good, and the other side that wants it all to kick off, basically. Because the thing is, as I've said before, things are going to have to get much worse before they get better. Now, as I said, Richard Inman, Paul Thorpe, they want us to remain calm, go in for the long haul, basically. Here's the problem with that. Because I want to be on that side, but I have my skepticism now. Because we have seen time and time again that this kind of shit gets put down to mental health and when was he born. So that if he's below 18, they can mask the fucker's identity, who I still believe to be Ali Shakti. And I will stick by that. And if the name is wrong, I'll apologise for that. I'll never apologise for calling him a Mullah Rice, though. Let me tell you. Because at the end of the day, the tactics he used, stabbing kids, the same tactics that Islamists use when they go after people. They like to target the kids, the most defenseless people. But Paul Thorpe, I want to message you directly. I want this to be peaceful. Believe you fucking me, I do. I've said I've had my anger issues before. I've even said I'll struggle to get through these next 5 years. But here's the thing. I don't think we've got 5 years to wait. We will be lucky if we have 1 year to wait, let alone 5. Like, it's all well and good asking for peace and calm and all that, but something's got to give in the end. And as much as I don't want it, I think the cold, bitter truth is, if this does not get solved in the next 6 months, 12 months tops, I think we're going to see a violent revolution. I really do. I think we're going to see it. Obviously, if you think I'm wrong, Paul, that's fair enough. Because I do accept that sometimes I am wrong about things. But I am very, very, very concerned that the more they attack our kids, the angrier these people are going to get. And no softly approach is ever going to change that. At the end of the day, if they see our kids getting hurt, us people, as you should know, Paul Thorpe, I'm not even sure if you have kids. I think you do. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I digress. There are people who are going to have kids who are worried about them. And if they keep seeing people's kids in other families getting killed, does it really go against logic to say they're going to be pissed if they see more and more attacks like this? I don't think it is. I don't think it goes against logic. These people are understandably pissed off. And I've said it in what I said earlier, and I'll say it again. I'll completely condemn the violence that occurred in that riot, but I completely understand the way they feel. I feel they were justified in their anger, but not their actions. Like, I want to be so wrong on this shit, because you have no idea how much I do not want a violent revolution. But I think the tensions are reaching an all-time high at this point. People have had enough of Islam. People have had enough of the mainstream media lying to them. They've had enough of the two-tier policing where pro-Plasticine or Palestine or whatever you want to call them. I think I was right first time. Sorry, Paz. Anyway, the Palestinians, they end up getting kid gloves while we get the riot squads whenever we are pissed off. And while I accept this is one of the very few times where they are actually in the right to bring the riot squad, because obviously people were throwing bricks. I think I even saw a television in there, although I could be wrong on that. It was definitely something fucking heavy, which obviously I cannot condone at all. But it doesn't change the fact that the police have been two-tiered about this the whole time, which is, again, something the mainstream media do not want to tell you. And the mainstream media obviously have a narrative that if you're supposedly far right, then they've got to do everything they can to smear you while protecting the police and the left wing and the establishment and the illegals that have no legal or human right to be here. Whichever way you slice it, I don't think the people have got the patience to wait 5 years to see a peaceful resolution to this. I think we're going to end up seeing a violent revolution. The army's going to end up being brought in, and then there's going to be blood on both sides. I think that's the cold bitter truth that people don't want to accept. And as much as I sign on to the idea of peaceful resolution and we fight for peace and what have you, I just don't think we've got the time frame to do it. And let me be absolutely clear, I cannot emphasize this enough. I am completely against a violent revolution, but I completely understand why the people feel the way they do right now. There is a time and a place for calm. There is a time and a place to try and do your peaceful resolution. However, the government, the police, and the mainstream media have all been working together to try and stop that. Everyone's saying, don't rise to it, don't react to it. But I think the problem is there's so much injustice going on. People, understandably, it's like a powder keg. It's being constantly filled with more and more gunpowder. And right now, I can literally see the fuse being lit right now. I can see the fuse being lit, and I think the keg's going to go off. That's my honest opinion on this. I think we're going to see it go off, and then we're going to see the media try to justify that, oh, you see, they are far-right racist thugs and football hooligans and lockdown protesters and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, they caused this. They cannot sit there and say, you see, their cause is not just, because they have been constantly poking the bear with a stick, and they'll be surprised when the bear suddenly turns around and bites their bloody head off, quite frankly. When that revolution comes along, they'll try to blame us, but anybody smart in the future will see that we were pushed to this. It's not something that we want. It's not something that we desire. It's not something that we've been actively seeking. This is something that has been at the back of our minds, but no one really wanted it. But our media will say, oh, this is their plan all along. No, absolutely not. I think, Paul Thorpe, you've got a year at most. to make this work. Same to Richard Inman, of course, since he's also in, not collusion, he's in conversation with you. I think you guys have got a year tops to make this work. And if it doesn't, it's all going to go up. Just like that. Those are my honest beliefs. So I think at the end of the day, we need to prepare for the worst. Because they will be. They'll be doing everything they can to get that reaction out of us and prepare for the worst themselves. But I don't think they realise just how much more of us there are than there are of them. Get the soy boys from the left wing to come after us. Ha! They see a load of football fans, burly men, they'll fuck off in the other direction, bluntly speaking. That's the way I look at it. And as I said, even if they bring the army in, a lot of them are going to be more on our side than theirs, let me tell you. And if they start training us up, God help the government, that's all I can say. Because they will be screwed. They will have no answer to that. They will have no means of being able to stop that. As I said, I don't advocate for it, but at the end of the day, people are losing patience. It's only going to be a matter of time. As I said, I think you've got a year at most. Maybe 15 months being generous. And if it doesn't work by then, I think there are going to be people who finally go over that cliff edge and decide they fucking had enough. And they're going to go after people. We're going to see innocent people dead, and I don't want that. But it'll happen. All because our corrupt media, our corrupt establishment, our corrupt police, our corrupt justice system are more interested in labelling Tommy Robinson as a terrorist just because he put out a video that embarrasses the government versus the people in that airport who were released free of charge even though they assaulted multiple police officers and should be thankful they didn't get 9mm solutions, if you catch my drift. The way people are looking at it is, when is enough enough? Or more importantly, how many more children need to die before we actually stand up and do something? We have been docile as neutered chihuahuas, quite frankly. I thought this symbol of Britain was supposed to be the British Bulldog. And I thought the British Bulldog doesn't roll over and have its tummy tickled liberally. Could be wrong on this, but last time I checked, I believe that was our go-to. But I cannot emphasize enough as well. I want it to work, Paul. I want it to work, Richard. I want it to work, Tommy. But I am just worried we do not have the time. There are going to be people who are not as patient, who are going to literally fly off the handle. I'm wondering what kind now. Is it a lever action or slam shut? Anyway, they're going to fly off the handle if they see more children die. And I don't think any of us want more children dead. Or anyone dead for that matter. We need to deport Islam, that death cult that has clearly no tolerance for our beliefs in our society. We need to shut down the borders until we can get our own house in check. We need to leave the ECHR so they can't try to force us to take more people or consider human rights. And we need to take out the trash, metaphorically speaking. Get rid of the people who are of no benefit to us or want to hinder us. Because we, at this point, need to stop being chihuahuas and we need to start being the British Bulldogs that we are. Because only then will we be able to take the fight to the mainstream media, the police and the government. And we will show them exactly how much more that these bastards have bitten off more than they can chew.